Thank you very much for having me, friend. My name is George Ngaira.
All right, beautiful morning. And I think maybe we'll start on a platform as we generate. There's Ngugi wa Thiong'o,
Yes.
an icon author, a man who was forced to run away from his country because he was speaking things that the powers that be then could not bear. But he breathed his last this week. And yeah, some of the things that you can remember about him.
Thank you, Fred. I think Kenyans have lost really an icon and a hero in that matter. And what all we can say now is that our heartfelt condolence goes to the family, friends of Ngugi. Writing is not just about writing. You don't write for the sake of writing. But when you write, it reflects the society.
True.
And when those who read the writings might tend to, it speaks volume. Someone can communicate loudly through writing. And that is exactly what the late Ngugi wa Thiong'o did. And for that, the impact that is there, it's something that was felt, and it's something that we can't erase in the near future. He really contributed, even through writing, he really contributed a lot to this generation and to us. And all we can now say is just to Mungu amlaze mahali pema. There is much to say. Yeah.
Ngaira.
An icon of Kenya's activism for many years. I'd like to pass my very sincere condolences to the family and the family of my sincere condolences to the family of the late Ngugi, Professor Ngugi, and the entire country. And he couldn't have gone at the right time, because Kenya is in that moment that we were in those days when it needed extremely very bold people to be able to check government, especially if you're dealing with a rogue government like the one that we have. And so it's just an awakening. I think he died at the right time so that people can pick up the lessons from his life and be celebrated for many years to come.
This is a guy who wrote during the times of Kenyatta and wrote very controversial things. And he was a Kikuyu, but really tore down a Kikuyu regime, so to speak.
And that shows the patriotism that was in him. Because at that time, it was not, they were seen as a traitor. Him and some of the other Kapenguria 6, those who did not believe in what Kenyatta turned into. We remember what was considered as the betrayal of the Mau Mau, because they said they went to the bush to fight for land, but when they came back from the bush to take over government, they didn't get the very land that they went to the bush for, because somebody else had chosen to pick the land on their behalf. And when they raised issues, they were considered traitors, and they were betrayed and secured. Some of them disappeared. They never understand where they left. Kungu Karumba and the Kapenguria 6. And so it took extremely very brave people who are unselfish, because the choices were very easy for him, because he was a homeboy. He was just supposed to be part of the regime. And
just align yourself with the regime.
Absolutely.
And you get all the goodies that come with that.
I remember one time the late great Joseph Martin Shikuku, Omwana Oyondi, the son of Oyondi, the great son of Kakamega County. I admired him a lot, and in his last days, he was a friend of mine, because I got to meet him he was part of ODM in the last years. And so when I first got to meet him and was telling me of how he joined politics, Freddie was in his 20s, he was just 25 or 26 years. And in the late 50s, when he chose to come to Nairobi and become a labor, part of the labor movement, which is then how he came through the Tom Mboya lineage to become an activist. And he eventually became the youngest person that went to the Lancaster, the big trip to the UK for the Kenyan Constitution. He was in his 20s, the rest were 60s. You can imagine the age difference. You're 25 and all your peers are in their 70s. I think him and Mboya were the youngest. Because Mboya was maybe 30, 31 there, and he was in his 26, 27. And he said, for me, it was always about passion. I love to see the country do well, and so I chose to take part into that process. And I've been in politics for 30 years as a member of parliament for Butere. And I had an easy job because Moi was my friend. Because remember, Shikuku, the Luyas, Shikuku, Moi, and Ngala were part of KADU and not KANU. So when they formed KANU, he was still part of Moi's allies, and that's why even when he fell out with Jomo Kenyatta, when immediately Moi became president, he released him. And he said, so he used to tell me, I had an option of now just collecting beach plots and all these hopes with because Moi had come a long way. But the moment I saw him betraying the people and he turned into a rogue president, I became a patriot. So he told me, he asked me, if you want to be a leader, Gaira, you must choose. What is your purpose? What do you want to do? Are you in business or do you want to help people? And then if you choose to be in business, then you align to business and go on a collection spree until when God says it's enough. But when you choose to, or rather, you can also choose to be a people's person. And so I broke my heart the day passed on here at the Texas Cancer Hospital. And I didn't know, I hadn't met him like maybe 6 months or so. Kume, that's the time he had been taken to India. And so when I saw on the newspaper, then on TV, sorry, at that time, the former Prime Minister then visiting him.
To visit him.
I said, man, then me and another friend of mine called Johnny, they said, hey, Mzee, he's been sick, Kumbe. I went to see him the next day. And luckily, when we go to the Texas Cancer Center, there was a lot of relatives and a lot of lawyers around there. So they were all considered his relatives. So when we just walked in, the people ahead of us must have been Israel. So they just allowed us, because it was a heavily, now that there was a big publicity around his hospitalization there, he had too many visitors, many of them VIPs. So the place had been sort of cordoned off. And so, but we were, me and John, my friend John, we narrowly got the access because they almost thought we were part of his relatives. And the people, like all the ladies that were ahead of us that just got into the hospital room, entered the room and left the door open. So by the time we turned, because we didn't quite know which room he was in, he turned like this. He saw me straight from the bed.
Yes.
And he was like, young man, you're also here today. I told him then that I wanted to run for the Tongareni seat. It was a new constituency that had just been hived off Kimilili, Dr. Secretary's constituency. So he was, and him, just like us, we are migrants in that place, meaning we are Kakamegans, but you're also settled in Tongareni, which is in the scheme there. So he was our neighbor in the scheme. So he always knew that if I was to be an MP, I was going to be his MP. And that was the very last day I saw him in the bed, and we talked for like 10
A man who loved the country.
Big time.
And we lack that, don't we?
Yeah,
I mean, we lack people who you just see and this man is just for country.
Because he said he had a choice.
You know what, Fred? As we were coming, discussing with my brother and another guy that we need people like Ngugi wa Thiong'o. Because before Fred, you become Fred. You are first a Kenyan.
Yes.
And before you are born into which tribe or area or region you are born to, you are first born a Kenyan by a Kenyan mother and a Kenyan father. Before even your parents decided to name you after their grandfather or after their fathers, but you are first a Kenyan. So I think we should carry the Kenyan first before everything, and that's why people like Ngugi wa Thiong'o couldn't find it with a lot of ease to run away from the narrative that if the president comes from my tribe, then we are in government.
Yes.
And we don't need to question whether the government finyas or not. We are just okay with it. But he has to say no and say we are Kenyans and Kenya come first. If you do something that is not right for the Kenyans, it doesn't matter whether you are my brother or my wife or my sister. I will tell you. If that means that it will cut our ties, so be it. But I will fight for Kenyans and I will put Kenyan first.
Let me say, if you look at the leadership that we have now, the people in power, do you see, who would you say is close to the Shukukus, the Ngugi wa Thiong'os, people who love Kenya?
Unfortunately, as it is now, if I look at the kind of leaders, I believe there are those who are the Sikukus and the Thiong'os are there, but unfortunately they get limited airtime.
They are clouded in the darkness.
Yes, but if I look at the current of leaders around us, I can see a group of selfish, self-centered leaders who only think about themselves.
But for us,
but not about Kenya.
For us, I always tend to think that Senator Khalwale embodied for quite a long time the politics of Shikuku, where he chooses most times, and Fred, if I call him now here, he'll pick the call. He chooses to be a very simple man. He's been in office for a very long time. He's now almost 20 years in elective offices. But he's a humble man in many ways and largely responds to the people's issues in a way that is not beneficial to him. He can't quite show you a lot of assets that he's acquired over the last few years. And many people will never forget the Kimunya must go rant, because that was a member of parliament holding a minister accountable in a government that he was part of. Remember, he was an assistant minister in that grand coalition government of President Kibaki. So he was basically checking his own minister. And that is the type of leaders that we had at that time, because they were passionate, they loved the country. Him and Boya are in the same category, because you can imagine Boya at that time, born in 1930, so 58, he was like 28, a 28-year-old, imagining the Kenya of tomorrow. And was saying, I think Kenya will need a certain type of crop of leaders to be able to take us into that industrious moment that we need to develop. And goes to the US and is able to work with the likes of President Kennedy and the others at 28 years. He was a very young man.
Yes. 28 is very young.
He was extremely young at that particular time. You know, with the airlift, and said, you know, requested President Kennedy and then a senator running for president in the US, that it would be a rich harvest if it gives an opportunity for young people to come from Kenya to be able to run the country. He was very futuristic in his mind at that particular age. I think that's a generation of leaders that we now lack we sort of lack within our system.
If you look at the likes of, let's see, the people who have presented themselves and are telling us they are leaders for this country, and they're definitely poised to seek the top seat. You're looking at President William Ruto. You're looking at, put there, Raila Odinga. You're looking at Wamunyoros, Gachagua. You're looking at Kalonzo Musyoka. Eugene Wamalwa, I don't consider him, okay, but let's throw him there. We have Martha Karua. We have your friend Natembea. We have, who else? Mostly these are the people who have presented themselves as likely
replacements.
Yes, and leaders.
Yes.
Do you see love for country in any of them?
I think of all the people that you mentioned there, Kalonzo Musyoka has been here for 40 years. Fred, there's nothing new we are expecting from Kalonzo Musyoka. I think all Kenyans are aware of that. His contribution, there's nowhere where you mention Kalonzo Musyoka in any of the landmark events that have happened in this country. Not at Independence Day, because he was alive. Not when there was a struggle for multi-party democracy, he was not there. Not when we had the new constitution, because he was largely a fence-sitter. So you can't place his name in the mark of history on the many things that have happened. So Kalonzo is out of it. But the others are a new generation of leaders. I like what Natembea has done over the years now. Natembea is a new politician, he's only 2 years in. But the language and tone, Fred, you know, Natembea is the only governor who has never boarded a plane and left this country for even one trip.
Oh, he's never boarded a plane and left
even one day for consultation or benchmarking or anything. And does not live in Nairobi. He lives in Kitale.
Yes.
Here he only has an apartment that he comes here for meetings and stays in and goes back. He has he's presenting, and the language and the tone of how he operates, he's presenting that kind of a demeanor of a person that is only speaking the people's language. And it does not seem to be very commercial.
Yes.
In his thinking, because I've had an opportunity to talk to him many times. He doesn't seem like a very commercial person. He just wants systems to work. You understand? And that's what this leadership is all about. So of all the people you listed, I remember all the others have been in government for many years. Eugene has been a minister for 15 years.
He has nothing to...
He's been a minister for, he's been a minister for 15
Eugene
years.
Basically, I think he's benefited a lot from the legacy of his brother.
Absolutely, because his brother was iconic in many ways. You can tell.
Kijana Wamalwa. Just in case you're wondering, there was a guy called Kijana Wamalwa.
Yes, which means junior, because his father was a senator, so he became a junior Wamalwa, because the father was Senator Wamalwa, and so that's how he got the name Kijana. Many people do not understand that, but because he ran, his father being senator of that Trans Nzoia area, then it was they were calling it Kavirondo. We had a different name that particular time. And so to differentiate himself from his father, then he had to be called Junior, like how you calling your son Fred Junior. And so that's it, Fred. Among the people that you've talked to them, most of them have been here for a very long time. Eugene and Wamunyoro has been here for a very long time. We can track their leadership and what they did. There's nothing to show for it. But maybe an exception of Natembea, because he's only been in politics for 2 years, we can give him a benefit of doubt. I'm not saying that because it comes from my place, but truth is, one has been in cabinet for 40 years and the other one has been governor for 2 years. Clearly, you'd expect more for those ones. For those ones that has been in 40 years.
But I think when we discuss, I think when we discuss about the leadership of this country, one thing I will plead to Kenyans and to everybody watching that let us put our tribe aside and look at individual and their merits, not based on where they come from. Because when we have problems and when we are facing problems as a country, it doesn't choose.
Trouble comes to all of us. It doesn't look at
your surname or whatever. So I want to buy into whatever my brother says. If you look at those groups, as much as Raila Odinga have been here for a very quite some time.
He has
had this good share of the cake.
Yes.
But as they say that a good dancer knows when to exit the dancing floor. And I think now Raila, the time has come now that he has to exit.
Would you say that? Would you say your former party leader, because you too and Gaira say you've exited ODM.
But
would you say that he has love for country? I mean, the guy has suffered for...
Let me tell you.
Yes.
I can say Raila have their love for country. That one, no doubt. I will give it to him. He has love of this country. He has fought for this country for many times. He has been in jail, fought for multi-party democracy, everything. Call it everywhere, new constitution, Raila name must appear somewhere.
Yes.
But I think going forward, because at least we know where we've come from, and now we definitely know where we are going to. As we are going forward, he has exhausted his ideas, and now he will make room for the new ideas.
There's now no place for him. He needs to exit the stage.
That's why I said a good dancer knows when to exit the dance floor, because now he has exhausted his ideas, and it is now time for him to embrace the new ideas and new change. Remember, when Raila was fighting, we were living in that analog world, whereby even if you want to write for your lover, then you have to use a letter.
Yes.
That in a here, you can only write at least 2 letters.
Yes.
Say for this day that you can even... the world is just within your fingertip, you know. So I think we should embrace the change and accept now we are in a new world, a new system, new development, and Raila's ideas somehow.
But
now talk about
President William Ruto.
This is a guy, of all those people that you've mentioned, there is nobody who have got many corrupt cases and have faced many corrupt cases than William Ruto. This guy, if you talk of all manner of corrupt things, then William Ruto is there. This is a guy that has been fired as a minister twice, as a minister of education, higher education, and as a minister of agriculture.
And still has a pending case in the international
corruption-related cases.
International court.
Yes, leave alone the international court. In our own local court, this is a guy that has been fired twice as a minister. And in all those cases, he was being fired because of corruption-related cases. So, this guy who lives and dwells in corruption, and anything that involves corruption. So I don't think, what other new thing do you want us to expect from him? Then maybe we'll be expecting a miracle that will never happen.
Now, if
Kalonzo Musyoka, I don't think anything new from him. I don't want to discuss Kalonzo because at least for the last 20 years, it's only yesterday that I saw him maybe talking like a real presidential candidate, of which I still have my reservations to that. But nothing new. I was talking to a friend who comes from this area. I asked him, what has Kalonzo done to you people from Ukambani? He said nothing. In fact, we are suffering more than those who are in opposition. In fact, you are saying you Luos are better than us by far, at least. So I think if he cannot help his own ward, then how do you want to convince me that he will help the entire country?
Now, talking about Raila Odinga, let me take you back there. President William Ruto seems to believe that Raila has a lot of capital, both human capital in terms of vote and goodwill. And that's the reason why, as we speak right now,
in Homa Bay.
He is in Homa Bay. He's courting the Luo nation and believes that by virtue of the goodwill he has shown Raila Odinga, that the people of the lake will show him favor and embrace him.
Fred, I want to say this, and for the benefit of our viewers, as someone who is in politics and a political player and will be in the campaign trail for 2027, one thing we are going to do and we want to walk away with is the tribal kingpinship. Because now, Raila has been seen as the tribal king of Luos. And for that, he has been loved and hated in equal measures. He commands a lot of support, that one I give to him. President William Ruto believed that if Raila today says that let's support him, And by the virtue of this tribal thing, the people will flock, will rally behind this party.
But you can't challenge that. You can't challenge that because
that's why
right now William Ruto is a darling in the Luo nation.
Not really, Fred.
He is. No. I mean, if you listen to the commentary, look at the people who are supporting him the most.
Fred,
when it comes to the cabinet, it's no longer even Kimani Ichung'wah.
Fred, the problem we have in this country is that by the end of the day, we elect press and worship team leaders. That's what we are saying. The only constant thing is change. And going forward, we are going to change this. We are moving from the tribal kind of politics. We are moving from the tribal kingpinship, whereby you say now I'll be the kingpin of Luo nation. You know the fact that William Ruto is in Homa Bay or was in Kisumu yesterday doesn't mean that Luos are doing well. And even if Luos are doing well, it will not be about Luos. It's about Kenyans. Why should just one region? Let me tell you one thing, friends. Yes. Why should we come up with this tribe whereby a region is the only person that will pressing a government, while by the entire country are not feeling well, my friend? That's where I draw the line. We must move away from this tribal kingpinship thing. That's the ideal. That's the ideal situation. Yes. That we must move away from this. And that's good leadership. But like they say, kwa ground vitu ni tofauti. Because if you listen to Amunyoro yesterday, but ground, just to take you back before you tell me Amunyoro. I'm coming back to what you're saying. If you listen to Amunyoro yesterday, yes, he was telling people that every region has its leader. And Kalonzo Musyoka, and he quoted them, Luo nation has, just like Wamunyoro is perceived to be the leader of the mountain, since politics is about numbers, we cannot wish away the fact that if you show favor to a certain leader from a certain region, you become a darling. Fred, let me tell you one thing. That thing is going to change. On 25th June 2024, Kenyans came out to reject a finance bill. By that time, you are here. What was in the mind of Kenyans was not tribe, was Kenya. They were out there for Kenya, not for my tribe. And that is where we are going to. Because if we can go the same route, that is why I find problem with this group of the Wamunyoros and the Rutos and the Railas. That's why I'm pleading to Kenyans that it is time now to usher in new leadership and do away with all these old guys who think the same way they've been thinking for the last 40 years. And we've never found any problem. If someone like Rigathi Gachagua can say that every region has a leader, every tribe has a leader, and when they are talking about every tribe, now he's talking about Kambas, Kikuyus, Luos, Kalenjins, now they come together. Who will talk about the Ndoromos? Who will talk about the Giriamas? Who is going to talk about the Kurias, who only have 2 constituencies in Migori County? Who is going to talk about those people, the marginalized, the Turkanas? Who is going to talk about those people from Baringo? We need a Kenya, my friend. We don't need a tribal kingpinship. We need a leader that will talk the language of Kenyans. That's why I'm telling Kenyans that the moment someone will come to us for presidency, by the virtue that this tribe will join force with this tribe, now we form presidency. Now what about other tribes? In Kenya we have 53 tribes, if I'm not wrong. But if you look at the politics, it's mostly about 10 people who come together. You'll talk about Luos, you'll talk about Kikuyus, you'll talk about Kambas, you'll talk about Kalenjins, lawyers. Okay? Now who will talk about those people from Coast Region? Who will talk about the Giriamas? Okay? Are they not Kenyans? They are. They pay taxes. Okay? Who will talk about the Maasais? Okay? I have a friend of mine, Fred, who is a plumber actually. Then by the virtue of his job, he was somewhere in the northeastern. Yes. Those people, they don't consider themselves Kenyans. Because they've been marginalized, like they've been forgotten by this government. Okay? And that is why we need a leader that will bring each and everybody living within the borders of Kenya to feel part and parcel of this country. Not some few people taking advantage of their tribe. Not someone thinking that he speaks on behalf of the entire community. No. As a community, we don't need someone to speak on our own behalf. We need someone to take care of our interests, because when we are facing problems, we don't face it as a community. We face it as Kenyans. True. When we talk of bad economy, we don't talk it as
So you don't think he has You don't.
As it is
do
today,
you think Ruto is reading Raila wrong in the sense that when it comes to the vote capital and all
Ruto
that?
is reading Raila right because that is what they believe in. That is the politics they've been playing for ages.
Yes.
But we as the new generation and as Kenyans, we are saying no to this kind of politics.
Yes.
That's why we are saying we are moving away from this tribal kingpinship. We are saying new leadership. Ruto is now, what we can say is now trying to massage his political marriage with Raila Amolo Odinga because that is the kind of politics they've been playing for ages. And you cannot convince them otherwise. That's why you even realize that Rigathi Gachagua will also speak the same language.
Because they come from the same
WhatsApp group.
But Gaira, how is this? First and foremost, he seems to be saying that probably Raila doesn't have as much capital, both human in terms of vote and influence, like he had before. But President William Ruto seems to believe that. And he's gone that, you know, he's right now in that area, knowing very well that he's going to harvest a lot of that vote.
Thank you very much, Fred. You know, Raila Odinga, the history of Raila Odinga is known and his contribution to the affairs of this country are well known. You can't take that away from him, what he has done over the years. I mean, he was part of the movement that was there in the 80s to kick out KANU, to bring in the new multi-party democracy. The 2010 constitution, Fred, there are people, even those who insulted him day in, day out, are beneficiaries of the new devolution, the funds that are being taken to the counties. I think amongst the people you listed, actually, in that list, I might have left Raila Odinga. Or he's one of those that you can visibly point a finger into something. But as human beings, Fred, we can always sometimes win and sometimes we lose. Or sometimes do what my brother Matthew is saying, you can overstay in the race and then you become irrelevant. It doesn't mean that the bell bottoms were not good fashion in the 80s. The bell bottoms was the end thing. And people loved and Fred and his peers in the 80s at the afro and the bell bottoms. You understand?
We thought, oh man, these guys are nuts.
Yeah, I'm telling you. But you see, if you do that today, you look, you know, depending with whoever is looking at him, I think you're out of place. You know, the big afro and the belly bottoms. But it was something in the 80s. So Israel Odinga, it doesn't mean that he hasn't contributed to what he's doing. He's been my party leader for 20 years. I think...
so he's a belly bottom fashion in this
of the 80s. Absolutely. He's outlived his good days as a player. And I think even up to now, he appreciates that is the situation. And I think he's in a retirement mode. And those who haven't read that will be shocked when that actually happens. And so, Fred, I've told you here before that even ODM as an institution has transitioned from a party that 102 members of parliament at the time when MPs were just 200, which was almost a 50% representation in the House, to now they have less than 50 elected MPs out of 290 constituencies. That means they're under 25. That is a party that can only, the graph is only going down. And going by what is happening now, particularly in the strongholds of the western region and the coast, and in Luo Nyanza as well, people sometimes underestimate the people of Luo Nyanza. Fred, there are people who've been winning seats in Luo Nyanza without ODM. In a place where you're getting a nomination certificate is always considered a done deal.
Yes.
Just the same way like in Kakamega, because you know outside Luo Nyanza, Kakamega is the strongest ODM county, where with the moment you get the nomination certificate for ODM,
you're through.
You're almost halfway in. You just now need to go around just shouting Baba and that's it, and you're in. But you see, Fred, over the years, people have been winning seats there, and all seats, not just one seat. You know, Governor Obado has been doing it multiple times. David Ochieng has done it with the parliamentary seats. Shakil Shabir is an Asian. He's not even a Luo, but you know, he's a naturalized Luo because he speaks pure Luo, and he's in the middle of the town, where the fire is most times. You know, that Kondele Junction takes you to Kawosh. It takes you to a place called Kawosh, to a place called Migosi. Have a lot of friends there. Every time I'm home, I'm always with them because we are just Kakamega and Kisumu is here and there. It's just like going to Thika or somewhere in Kitengela. And so I'm always there most times. That is the headquarters of resistance. But they still have time to vote against an ODM candidate. And much was give it to a white person. You know, the Asians, they call themselves brown, but they're actually white in the context.
No, they're just brown.
Yeah, that's what.
There's no white person. I've never seen a white person. You know what white looks like? These guys are just pink.
But in the context of the identity politics abroad, you know, it's funny, the Chinese, the Indians are considered brown.
Yeah, they're brown.
When
this is white. Jatela, this is white.
You understand? You understand? So
Alan, our cameraman, who considers himself very light.
Yeah.
This is white.
So Fred, in Kisumu, that is, they've repeatedly been electing people in different parties. Yes. It's just that it's never pronounced. You understand? And I think it will be even the attrition rate will be even much higher in 2027, because then we might find ourselves out of the 30 MPs that are possible MPs from the Nyanza region, ODM might not get half of them. Which is meaning 15 MPs or to 15 or to 20 MPs, because it has been happening. It will not be breaking news. Remember, Ugenya is in the middle of Siaya County.
Yes.
And that is where David Ochieng has repeatedly won against ODM and largely been an open government operative, isn't it?
So what you're trying to say is that the Luo Nyanza might surprise people.
Fred, there was always a group of people that will go with you on the way to the toilet and sink with you, just like flies. But there are those ones who are taking time to listen through. I've listened to some people, Fred. Remember, the most informed voting bloc in the country is the Nyanza bloc. They are the ones who know the history of the country because they've been part of it throughout the years. And so there is no other community, Fred. And even if you walk to town near Jivanji Gardens, Jacaranda Gardens, come to Mombasa, I used to, in Mombasa many years, there's a place just near KPA there. You'd always find people politicking, even today. They do it openly, out of passion. And some of them are not idle people. Some of them have jobs. Around lunch break, they show up at the bunker because they're just passionate about the country and where the world is going. And I can tell you there's a significant number of people who have now concluded that the journey of Mzee is over. We respect him, but we wish him well in his affairs as he moves on to do other things. But that will only reflect on the ballot, especially in the by-election. Now that we still have now with the issue of IBC, we might stay for a little bit longer. Now there's a case in court which has allowed the vetting, but they've said until the case is sorted, the president cannot swear in the commissioners. That means it's another uncertainty for
that's a foregone conclusion, because if you allow people to be vetted, so we vet and then we declare these are the suitable ones. It's just a way of
the judge
shrouding the eyes of Kenyans, because this once
Fred,
you're vetted,
Fred, the court has said there are serious personal integrity issues that have been raised of these persons. But today, legally, as we speak, they are not commissioners. So the petition is ahead of time, because they can also be not voted for. So they might not be cleared. So you will have gone ahead of time. You understand? So the judge is saying, let's go through the process and conclude that these are actually now commissioners. Then we can challenge their integrity before they're sworn in. And I remember I said this last week. I said, and I had a similar discussion yesterday with another party leader. And I was telling him that I've been to court before on a similar issue. And the judge gave us a similar decision. He said, mmekuja mapema. Because these people are not commissioners as we speak.
So you cannot challenge them
as commissioners because they are not yet. Let them be commissioners first, then you come and challenge their integrity. You understand? That's why this judge has given exactly, because in law there's something in law there's something called law of precedence. You check case law, you check previous cases how they're determined. So we've had similar cases, and they had to allow the process to go through just to ensure that Parliament as a legal entity goes through its process. Then once it hands over the names, then they are out of the parliamentary process. And now they're now exposed to the judiciary, then that can be challenged to the judiciary. But my point was that as soon as this IBC is in play, it will be interesting to see what happens in Kasipul, Kabondo, and in Ugunja. Both Homa Bay and Siaya. These are strongholds of ODM. You understand? Because Kisumu is very cosmopolitan, Fred. Fred, there's a place in Kisumu Town West where we have Nyangori High School. My brother is schooled there. It's just on the boundary of Vihiga and Kisumu and Nandi. That roundabout has almost 10 communities living there. You can't know who is who. Because on this side, on the left side, it is Kisumu Town West, which has been Olago Loch. He's been winning there with Ford Kenya for years, because half of his constituencies are Luyas. So he only ran on Ford Kenya to get a Luya vote and then negotiate maybe his clan or something like that. And he keeps winning. He keeps winning the seat. You understand? On the flip side, on the opposite side is Kisumu Town East, which is where the Shakil Shabir has been winning. Very cosmopolitan, goes right into town. So most of the people that live there are Luyas and Kisis and everybody else. Anybody can win that seat. Actually, a Luya can even win that seat of Kisumu Town East, because it's right in town. You understand? So we have have such cases, and even Kisumu Town Central, which is now the CBD, as well. You understand? So, Fred, that will be tested when we get to the by-election, and I believe the numbers will be very low, because most people, just like myself, are over with the journey of ODM and Raila Odinga, and we wish him there well. Fred, you'd never find me insulting that Mzee. I just said what we needed to achieve we have achieved what we could, and now we have to progress and leave the next generation of leaders to now pursue the remaining part of the vision. And I think today the assumption is that he still enjoys the similar political capital, but as they say, numbers don't lie. The by-elections will give us an indicator.
All right. Now, as we start bringing this down, Wamunyoro says that he's changed his petition in court.
Yes.
Says that first he was just seeking for, the process declared null and void and all that. But now he's seeking compensation. He's saying, guys, I want all my pay for the 5 years that I would have served. Then I want to be taken back to the office. It's complete reversal. Your thoughts?
I think for this, we'll give it to those who know laws better. But for us Kenyans, it's funny because I don't know what Wamunyoro now wants. I don't know whether he wants to be the president, want to be the party leader, or want to be the deputy president.
Yes.
It's all so confusing. But again, talking of that, after the court decision, the Chief Justice came out and made it clear that once you are impeached, and you are impeached, because he was impeached by both the Parliament and confirmed by the Senate.
Yes.
So according to the Chief Justice is that as it stands now, Rigathi Gachagua is impeached, and there is no doubt about that. So I think he should just accept his fate, and maybe accept and move on, as Kenyans would say. But again, my brother Ngaira, who is a lawyer, can interpret it further.
Yes.
Because from where we sit, we know Rigathi Gachagua is impeached, and that is how it is.
Fred, the last time I was here, I told you that there's no Kenyan here who does not deserve his constitutional rights to be upheld.
Yes.
And I think even the time when Gachagua was impeached, we were here, and I said that I might not like Gachagua, but I do not appreciate the process of how it goes, because tomorrow, Fred, I could become a deputy president.
You could be the one who's been taken through the
same process. And they say you should not.
Precedent has
already been set, and I wouldn't want to be treated unfairly, you understand?
Yes.
And so Kenyans, because we do not have a very formal impeachment bill, which had been some of the draft bills which had been proposed for checking the president.
Yes.
Because remember, Fred, we've concluded that Kenya has a very good constitution. We only have a problem with the presidency. Once we find ways of checking the presidency, then everything else will fall into place. Yes. Because there are people in government, public servants, who know what they're supposed to do, but they're unable to do it because of this element of the presidency. So a president is able to veto a legal process that somebody is supposed to do legally. You understand? Because they say there are orders from above. I think you know that kind of a statement.
Yeah.
So we need to check the presidency, and some of the proposals that had been made was the referendum bill, which was going to give an alternative of impeaching a president, so that if you cannot impeach a president through parliament process because of the numbers, you can get through the universal suffrage process, where you can say you collect a certain number of signatures, maybe 1 million signatures, and then it's taken to a referendum, and the people actually impeaches the president. That was one. Also, we had an impeachment bill which was supposed to cater for both the president and the governor as well, which was supposed to introduce a minimum time limit of serving, so that you do not just have a governor coming in and then some rogue MCAs are showing up the following week to impeach him. You need a realistic time to be able to serve, so that then we can be able to separate partisan politics from actually executive challenges that we have in terms of governance. So that impeachment bill was supposed to define that process, that this is how it takes, is the time limit, and this is how you impeach a president, a governor, and this is how you raise the signature, and how then do you protect even the people who are partaking in that impeachment process. What rights do they need? Because sometimes then you're exposed to security risks. Like now we have the issue of presidential candidates, Fred. You know it legally now. Once you're cleared by IBC to become a presidential candidate, government is required to give you security until and after the election process, because you become exposed in terms of security. So that impeachment bill was supposed to do that, so that the person pushing for the impeachment process can be guarded and protected by state. And so it was a very, there were two, I think there were three. The third one was the recall bill for MPs and MCAs, which again was also to give the time limit that an MCA or an MP must first of all serve a year or two, because for MP it's actually 2 years. It's already been set, but the same was to apply apply with the MCA. So that at least after 2 years, then this is the process of recalling an MP, and it should be time bound, that it takes 90 days or 120 days, and this is how you raise it through the IBC. So there were some things that were supposed to be done to check the presidency. So Fred, in this particular case here, the Gachagua has a right to be able to question how the process was. Clearly the process was political. They never really gave him a chance to listen to himself. Looking at the charges there is no criminal. Remember, Gachagua has not been convicted in any court for even stealing a chicken. There is nowhere, not even an integrity issue of being, say, you are considered tribal or whatever in an institution and you are impeached. Nowhere. So there is no real mistake. Maybe there is, but they didn't present it on that day in the impeachment process. So he's right when he says all these are mere allegations that can be challenged in court, and let the court define the mistakes that we did so that we know whether the process was fair. You understand? That process was never allowed to go through it. You understand? And then we have the issue of his replacement, because they said the deputy president has to be vetted by IBC. IBC has to present a name. When did the IBC do that? We didn't have a commission at that particular time. We still do not have a commission today. Then who cleared this deputy president to become a nominee so that he's passed by parliament? Fred, all these are questions that we need to make sure they're checked so that in future then, future deputy presidents are able to do that. Today as we speak, people do not, for the benefit of Kenyans, Gachagua's case hasn't started. These were technical issues were being raised on the process, the formalities of what was happening in the parliament and in the Senate. And that's why he wanted the whole process of swearing in being stopped so that the issues are addressed in terms of process, so that once it's concluded that it was a fair process is when now we can proceed with swearing in, which didn't happen because they forced a rogue judge, a rogue bench to give a go-ahead for that. And that bench has been considered unconstitutional. So that decision...
the same bench will come and decide on this case?
No, the case has already been recalled by the Chief Justice. It has been taken back to the CJ's office for him to set up a new bench to listen to that particular case.
I thought...
He did set a new bench. And
they said she set a new bench. And the new bench
is just the
same bench that made the decision.
That okays the decision of...
When did you should do that? I might have missed that part because, but as far as I'm concerned, that is what was supposed to do, to set up a new bench so that it can listen to the process as well. So the decision that was made at that particular time was null and void, which then it voids the whole process of swearing in Kindiki Kithure. So it is a valid decision because then it, as it stands today, then he's the deputy president. You understand? And we need to get,
as it stands today, Wamunyoro is the deputy president
because he had already gone to court to stay that process of swearing in. And that process was okayed by this bench that has been declared as constitutional. From there, it's very easy for you to interpret what it means. It means then the process wasn't fair. So then he stands as a validly sitting deputy president today. You understand? We might not like him, but that's legally what it means. You understand? And he has a right to exhaust that all the way to the Supreme Court. Right? That could take years. You understand? And by then, we would have moved on to other things. So he's very within his right to be able to ask for whatever benefits that he has. Maybe he's concluded he might not be interested in going back to that office. But legally, he has a right to do that. And I wish you could go through that process so that future presidents and future people, deputy presidents who are impeached, know what is rightfully theirs. Because tomorrow, Fred, you might be that deputy president.
There's something else. The NCIC had summoned him because of the statements that he made. He's refused to go. And he says, before I go there, let Raila Odinga go because of the statements he made. Let Oscar Sudi go because of the statements they've made. And he said, if these guys don't go, don't expect me to come either.
I think for this I blame the NCIC. You know, the problem we have in this country is that we have independent commissions, but they are only independent on paper. It's hard. It's a very sad state, and now that we are talking of leadership, that's why we need leaders who even respect other institutions. Because how do you call yourself an independent institution or an independent commission, but you've been allowed to become part of political players in this country? Whereby the NCIC, when these other people were talking, as much as I might not agree with Rigathi Gachagua, but you know, you don't kick a man who is already down. Right? You know, it's not right. And I think NICIC should do better than what they are doing. Because if they stand for whatever they mean, if whatever they say and whatever they stand for is what guide them, then at least they should not apply some kind of favorism. So that when it is Rigathi Gachagua, when someone committed an offense, the offense will be tackled irrespective of your status in the society. Let it not be that now because I'm a friend to the president, I can say whatever I want to say and it goes scot-free. In the moment I am not a friend to the president, then now my rights is now being looked on. Okay? When the likes of Oscar Sudi was saying all manner of things they were saying. And I think there was nobody who is so careless in this world like Oscar Sudi and Junet Mohammed. Save for Rigathi Gachagua. And this one I'm not afraid to say it.
Yes, the
people who are very careless with words. The Junet Mohammed and the Oscar Sudis we have in this country. And now the Kimani Chungwa. These are people that are very careless with words. Okay, but we've never seen even a single day them being summoned by the NCIC. As much as I don't support what Rigathi Gachagua said in this statement.
But at least an institution.
But at least let us see some kind of seriousness and some kind of equality in how they apply whatever they are doing.
Even
it will not be wrong.
Sorry?
Even EACC. It will be so wrong that I say something, then I'm being arrested. And when my brother Ngaida said the exact same thing, then he walks scot-free. That's being unfair. And so for this, I think Rigathi Gachagua will now tell these people to get serious.
Fred, it's unfortunate that NCIC and EACC, which have very critical roles
as far as
the national security is concerned, because one is dealing with tribalism and another one is dealing with corruption. Two of the biggest issues that are challenging this country, Fred, is tribalism and corruption. And when you look at the timing, sometimes you can even see a case, Fred. EACC has offices in 47 counties, by the way. Their operation is actually we were hoping that all the independent commissions were going to be given budget so that we'll be able to scale this to the sub-counties. So because corruption is everywhere, you understand? That means that we can be able to present 290 criminals on daily basis.
And when we devolved,
mass prosecution of... It is what the process is. But look at the timing, friend. Just when, for example, the issue of ESCC, just when the political heat is at the top of it,
that's where they go after Natembeya.
That's they go to Natembeya. The timing is just not correct. It might be true because Natembeya is not an angel. It might be true that he has some corruption.
But now,
look at nobody believes you.
But now, why is it that it is only when now he's criticizing the government,
and then they all of a sudden show up, and then the flimsiness of the case. You remember one time I was with this Morara, and just slightly after he was trending, and just I saw cops coming in, and then they picked him. They said in Langata, they picked him and said that they were arresting him for having abused the president, disrespected, misusing of a gadget and whatever. They took him in circles. Eventually, when they got him to court the next day, they complained and fret because in an OB somebody has to complain. That you see, so and so has insulted me. So William Samoei Ruto ID number 4444 is supposed to go to the police station and complain, so that now there's a reason for a notice of arrest to be issued. There was no complainant there. When eventually they look at the complainant, it was a guy called David Lagat, a businessman in Mombasa. So they had to issue a statement and say there is no way I have complained. And even if it was true, David Lagat and William Ruto are two different people. You understand? But the cops spent money. The DCI spent. You can go on YouTube and see they spent vehicles, fueling, just chasing this young man around, spending taxpayers' money, just for show off.
I think there is a lot of misuse in this country.
And also
a lot of drama.
Yes, and talking about drama, you have the Koimburi drama. An MP who kidnapped himself, went to a hotel, paid for the room using his M-Pesa. As in, at least be bright.
At least be smart.
If you're doing something, be smart. I saw a picture of him. He has taken off his coat and then exercising how he's going to posture on the farm. I'm telling you, it's ridiculous. And I had said it here. When that story came, I was reading it in the morning and I said, my spirit has refused this. This guy is faking it, and he faked it.
It's sad. It's sad that these leaders now have turned Kenya.
So Fred,
Yes.
there are some critical institutions like the ESCC and NCIC that have some very serious roles to do in this country. But it's unfortunate that they play into the politics of the day, which makes them unserious. And that's why they're completely underfunded. ESCC today, if well-funded, can be a very busy institution. Because there are people stealing money even in our villages.
Yeah, even as we speak
It's
right
easy
now.
to mount, I've told you, 1,500 corrupt animals on daily basis. You understand?
Yes.
But they're just not doing it. You understand?
Ngaida, let me just say one thing. It's not about being funded. If they decided, because what other fundings do they need? They are being paid by taxpayers' money. Their cars are being fueled by taxpayers' money. There is no any day they've requested for any support from any government if they've been denied. They've never come out to say anything. They have just decided to sit on their job and massage their bases. Yes. So I think they should just now come up and do whatever they are being paid to do, rather than sitting on the job if they can't do it.
Fred,
You know,
I really thought Bishop David Oginde would breathe in a new life in ESCC because he's more educated, he's very articulate, he's been part of the national infrastructure. And like Bukala was just a professional cleric, you understand, was there before. Bukala was a bit, from my home counties of Bungoma, maybe likable, but the personality that's needed to partake is soft criminals. You see, people stealing billions are not hardcore criminals, pickpockets and armed robbers. No, they are the soft criminals that need a brainy guy that can be able to smoke them out. You understand? And David Oginde, a wonderful guy, an architect, has done well with the CITAM church, within the Christian space. I really hope he will do this. So I keep asking myself, when he sits as a chairman of ESCC, and you can see this is purely a political move, how do you contain your officers? Even if it was true, because I've said Natembe is not an angel. It is possible that he's done that. But the timing of how you do it, it rubbishes a genuine effort.
It's an indicator that there's interference.
My submission for the ESCC that is at all, we want ESCC to be serious, then I think whoever will be in charge of ESCC should be even a KDF soldier, someone who can streamline.
The unfortunate thing, if you put a KDF soldier there, he will take instructions from the commander.
But there was.
No,
the CEO was a KDF.
We might even
He
look
will take
at...
instructions
But
from...
Trolley was a KDF.
True.
The CEO that has served for 6 years.
Look at,
But he will take instructions
We've already had
from the commander-in-chief of the...
Fred, we've already had a CEO.
and it didn't work.
Then we have
6 years.
we have a bigger problem. That we need
The
to
CEO was a KDF, the chairman a bishop.
Yeah.
It didn't work.
Now we have a very serious problem that at least we need to solve. But coming on the case of the self-abducted MP who decided to, these people, if you look at how our politicians behave, they've turned these countries to a theater of dramas. Huh? I find it so hard to differentiate leaders, those MPs sitting in that parliament, to guide this country with our agencies that call themselves the content creators. It's a very slight difference between either of them.
The things they do to get
things they do to get likes and popularity is more or less the same with these our young men, young boys and girls doing content creation. The other day I saw even your good Nairobi women representative decided to join the league. Now that can tell you the kind of leaders we have, and that's why I've always preached this for the longest time and for everybody I met anywhere, that we need to change this country, and by changing this country, we are not going only to focus on the president. We are going to focus on leaders right from the MCA to the president, so that when we elect leaders, Fred, we elect leaders with integrity. I believe in this country, we have men and women of integrity who love this country to the core. Not someone who will fake his abduction just to escape another court case.
Yes.
Not someone that will play and make fools of Kenyans. Paint the name of this country, even to the international community. That was so childish of that guy. It's just not, and I don't think...
And he should, as we bring the curtains down, he should actually face... he should be prosecuted.
Exactly. Some serious actions will be taken against this guy, because that's something that we can't encourage. And I believe, for the very first time in this, I will say the good people of Georgia, that guy does not deserve to represent you.
You know what? Hizi stories za jaba that these members of parliament and some of our leaders are bringing have to come to an end.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, a majority of the people who are criticizing them are criticizing them because they are on this side. Once we get you from here and we put you in that seat, and then 2 million shillings, 20 million, like Sonko was saying. Sonko said, I think it was 40. Somebody brought to his office. Ukiletewa 40 million kwa ofisi yako leo, mahali huko, mtu anakuambia wacha hii kitu ipite, ndio hii 40 million. Utakataa wewe. Najua umeita your member of parliament a thief. Will you say no? That's a question, because that's where the problem is. As you think on that, have yourself a good morning.